Hello everybody, this is Stuart Wilde. Welcome to my series called 33 Steps Beyond the Earth Plane. This series was recorded live in Washington, D.C., and we've since taken that material and re-edited it and brought a lot of it up to snuff and re-recorded parts of it. Before we go into the actual text and I talk a little bit about this whole philosophy of the 33 steps, let me give you a little bit of background about myself. A lot of the work that is contained in this material was talked about very, very briefly in my book, The Force. And that particular book explained this whole idea of an infinite reality within all things, and it introduced the reader to the Taoist philosophy of detachment. I was very influenced by the Taoist philosophy because I studied for 3 years in London, England with a Taoist teacher. Up until like the age of 28, I basically specialized in being the world's greatest lunatic. And I spent those years sort of from my teenage to the year 28 making a pack of money and carousing and living this very hedonistic lifestyle. And it wasn't until my late 20s that I one day decided or wanted or felt the need to go upon some kind of spiritual quest, because basically I'd burnt myself out on all of the physical aspects of life. It was then that I bumped into a psychic medium, an American, who in those days was teaching at the London College of Psychic Studies. What he basically did was he entered into trance and he talked out of trance using the personality of a spirit entity that he called Old Chinese. In modern times, I suppose we would call that channeling. Whether or not you're into channeling or whether you think it's a load of hocus and pocus, basically speaking, I found that the quality of the information and the beauty of the whole Taoist philosophy very, very valuable, and it dramatically changed my life. I never have really had too much of a judgment around whether or not the medium is really channeling some spirit from the 10th century or not. It's irrelevant to me. If the spirit is as thick as two planks and doesn't know whether he's Arthur or Martha, I'd walk out. But if the spirit has good things to say, I don't care if it's a spirit or a recording from the back of the room. And I think really that's how one has to approach spirituality, from the practicality of, hey, what is this stuff going to do for me? Rather than getting too hung up on, hey, what is actually happening here? Because in the end, who cares what's happening? It's like watching a film and sort of trying to critique it from camera angles and, did the clapper loader do a good job and is the lighting any good? And in the end, the film is a story of pictures and words, and you either enjoy it or you don't. And so for me, it was really a realization or a feeling that, having created a tremendous amount of success very early in my life, I now needed to tap into that inner power. And it's amazing over the period of the last sort of 10 to 15 years how that whole realization has taken root in the consciousness of so many people. Sort of physical success, material acquisitions and so on isn't enough. There has to be an inner meaning. So for me, Taoism was the way. I suppose partly because I was brought up in Africa and I was brought up with a very kind of liberal lifestyle. And so when I went back to my home country, England, and tried to go to like an old English school and fit into the English system, it was hopeless for me. I mean, I was like born and bred to be a fringe person. And I think many of us out there are the same. We don't quite fit in society. It doesn't mean that we're necessarily anarchists and want to blow up City Hall. But we look at society, we look at the manipulation and the control and the pettiness and the kind of small-mindedness, and we don't fit. And it seems to me that we have to go through a tremendous amount of gnashing of teeth and grinding to the point where one day we sit down and we stop resisting and we agree that, hey, I'm a fringe person, I'm never going to fit. I'll keep the laws and I'll try to do the best I can and file the forms and so on, but I'm never going to fit into this system completely and entirely. It seems to me, if you look at the New Age movement across the world, sort of through England and Canada, North America, and over to Australia and so on, there's so many of us that just, we don't fit in, and it doesn't matter really that you don't. But there's a point in that not fitting in where you have to walk away from the old system, otherwise you're constantly like jangled by this dichotomy of the fact that who you really are is an infinite being that has tremendous difficulty, like adapting to a very restrictive, manipulative society that he or she may live in. So when I was first exposed to Taoism, I sucked upon it like a starving man locked in a cake shop. It seemed marvelous because here was like a way of being spiritually okay and still not necessarily being into the nitty-gritty day-to-day actions of society, because it seemed to me that society constantly wanted to like pull us in, suck us in, involve us in the concerns of the world. And here was a philosophy that said, step away, walk away, become strong on your own.